I'm so happy to be here, Leslie. Thank you for
No problem.
having me on this panel. I hope is everyone having a good time today?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Ben is the executive editor of DC Comics. Let's start right at the beginning and tell us your secret origin. Since we are talking about DC Comics, we got to talk about secret origins.
That's true. That's true. So thank you. Yes, I am the executive editor at DC, and so I'm going to date myself a little bit here. Maybe by the white hair, you can tell I'm a little bit old, right? So this is actually my 25th year working professionally in comics. I have been, worked for many different publishers. Where it began was I ended up was the first editorial intern that Dark Horse Comics ever had. Yeah, and I was studying history at university, so it has nothing to do with comic books. But I was a comic book reader as a kid. My older brother was like a hardcore Marvel guy, so I would always read his books. So when I got the opportunity to work in the editorial department, it sort of opened my eyes to the possibilities of what you could do if you had no skill in drawing or writing. It was like, the editor is sort of like a very big piece to the whole creative puzzle. They can be whether part of the whole story, building everything, or like just as like sort of a creative project manager. Mm-hmm. So then when I graduated college, they hired me as an assistant editor. And then from there, I've gone to work. I worked at New York, DC in New York. I worked at Marvel. I worked at a startup. And now I'm on my third tour of duty actually with DC. Right. And so I was hired as the director of talent relations. So I used to do a lot of conventions when I went to South Africa and stuff. And then they moved me over just over 4 years ago to take over the Bat Group.
That's right. I remember that era.
Yep. Oh, it was like scary and like horrifying in a lot of ways to suddenly go, you're going to run like a double ship Batman book. But 55 Batman issues later and, 4 years in, we've had a pretty good run. And I got promoted 2 years ago to executive editor. So in a nutshell, that is my secret origin. I just happened to get an internship that led to me talking to you today, Leslie.
Lucky. So in your day-to-day as the executive editor of DC Comics, tell us what an executive editor does.
Well, that's a good question, and it's probably a long-winded answer to come, so everyone bear with me. So, because I wear many hats at DC. So my title is executive editor, and it oversees the DC universe. So basically my job is, like, at least the title of the job, like, help sort of oversee and shape the direction of the entire DC core universe. So I'm sure everyone knows what the DC core universe is, but in case you do not, so it's basically the canonical driven, series, Batman, all the Metropolis titles, Justice League, etc. So that I'm the executive editor of that whole line. But I also, in my spare time, I suppose, I'm also technically still the group editor for all of the Batman titles.
All right.
So Gotham City is my direct domain. I'm the lead editor on Batman and Robin, Birds of Prey, Penguin. I edit about 10 books a month by myself.
All right.
And then I also have, there's a question that you set up a little later. So coming in 2024, I'm also overseeing an imprint called Elseworlds, which is sort of
it's coming back.
Yeah, we announced it back in New York Comic Con. So the return of Elseworlds in 2024. And so I'm overseeing and editing all of those titles as well. But the executive editor is just the core DC universe, like our event planning, trying to plan 18, 24 months out to where we're going to be. Like we're already working on 2025 and stuff at this point too. So.
So we know who to blame for anything that you do not like in the upcoming Batman books. There's been lots of teasers about what's going on with that, and also what's going on with Flash and Wonder Woman. Those were the two new relaunches in the last couple of months. I really, really love those two books. Very good. Yeah. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And buck up with some of the other ones that I don't quite like. I'll tell you a little bit more about it.
Now I'm very curious. Yeah, no, this year it was great. So, we have this Dawn of DC initiative that we worked on.
Yes.
So Paul Kaminsky, who's our awesome group editor for the Metropolis line, was sort of the brain in some ways behind the Dawn of DC, because it started with Superman #1 and Action Comics 1051, where this sort of launch earlier in the year. And so it sort of saw this, like, sort of in some ways line-wide refresh that saw a new Flash #1, a Wonder Woman #1, a lot of new titles and stuff. So it's been an exciting year in that sense for DC.
And I really like the fact that you've got very interesting creators like Tom King on Wonder Woman and all. Really, really exciting. And I'm really glad that you've put together such a very inclusive and yet diverse set of creators for a very good established number of books. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that was the goal, kind of going
yeah.
in to try to as we bring in new creators or challenge existing ones to,
That's right.
and trying to and Donna DC was great in the sense that it was brought a lot of characters back that hadn't had their own series either before, or like recently, like Hawkgirl
Yep.
or Cyborg, or
Right.
then the new Birds of Prey, and
That's
so
right.
it was like a little something for everyone. I'd like to
Yeah.
think.
I wanted to touch a little bit on the fact that you're like the custodian of the DC universe in that sense, right? How do you work with the wider Warner Brothers Discovery Group, which is the parent company of DC, on some of these more long-term, plans with the characters as well as the franchises?
Well, actually, this will probably be the shorter answer in the sense that for the core line, we don't really work
Okay.
with the larger franchise groups or the media groups. We have a division at DC Publishing called Global Publishing Initiatives.
Uh-huh.
So they tend to spearhead a lot of the product and stuff that connects to this sort of larger media stuff.
Right.
With the core line, we just kind of have our own we set our own course.
Okay.
And sort of sail our own direction.
Okay.
And maybe someday, we'll see sort of like things based off the product that we're doing now. But
Sure.
we're in a lot of ways, very singular in the core line with our own publishing focus.
Right. So in your day job, you report to Marie Javins, who is the editor-in-chief. But there's also that big kahuna, Jim Lee, that is everybody's favorite artist and chief creative officer of DC in itself. Can you tell us a little bit about how Jim Lee is as the big boss? And also, there's a petition going on somewhere around here to get Jim to come to Singapore, right?
Oh, hey.
Right. So let's
All right.
talk a little bit about Jim Lee.
All right.
as a
Well,
boss.
Jim Lee. First and foremost, I'll just say I'm going to work to get Jim Lee here. I'm going to tell him
Please.
I will say, I mean, this is, all jokes aside, this show has been phenomenal today. It is so well organized. It is so well run. All the fans, the people of Singapore have been great. I could have nothing but great things to say. But Jim's amazing in a lot of ways. I mean, he is essentially like a prodigy,
Yeah.
in every sense. Like he is sort of super smart, super talented, like focused, committed. It's amazing. You can have a conversation with him, and just the institutional knowledge he has, or he can draw back to like when we were working on X-Men, or you know what I mean.
Right.
Like he's like a encyclopedia of just creativity and like business savvy, and like if you ever actually get a chance to meet him at the convention, he's also the most approachable, like nice person you could ever meet. It's almost unnerving, like just like how good natured he is
Right.
and funny and stuff.
Right.
But it's been great. I mean, he's been publisher. So he's solo publisher now, but
Yep.
he's been co-publisher since I think 2012.
Uh-huh.
So he's worn a lot of different hats because I was an editor at his Wildstorm imprint before he
That's right.
became publisher
Right.
way back in the early 2000s. So he's great.
Yeah.
And like I said, it'll be my mission to get Jim Lee in Singapore in 2024.
I'll buy you a meal if you can get him here.
I'll take you up on that, Leslie.
Yes, please do. I'll go into the really tough questions now because the title of this session is Crisis on Infinite Comic Book Stores, and the whole industry as a whole, with it shifting a little bit towards manga. If you go to bookshops these days, you'll see a lot more manga than American comic books, right? So let's talk a little bit about the industry that we love and know. How can we bring in younger readers, newer readers who are sort of raised on all these bite-sized entertainment like TikTok and YouTube and all that? How do you get them to go back to reading comic books? Any thoughts?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation we've been having for ages, I would imagine. Easily since I've been like a group editor or when I was talent relations executive editor now, like at least a decade, if not more. So, I mean, DC's approached it in very different ways. Unlike some of our sort of competitors and stuff, like everything we've largely done has sort of been in-house. So how do you compete, with the manga and the young adult novels and stuff? So we actually have our own line of like middle grade and young adult graphic novels that we produce internally and release. We have an editorial group that oversees them, and we've had a lot of success with those. And we also have a very successful like webtoons relationship that we're just now starting to publish, like Wayne Family Adventures and Vixen and things. And there's more planning on that front.
That's right.
And then lastly, we've also had a very fruitful partnership with Kodansha in creating sort of authentic, DC manga in Japan that we're now releasing both on DCUI digital platform, but also in print. And hopefully that is a relationship that's going to sort of like spawn more sort of like cool, like I said, authentic tales. If anyone wants to check out a mind-blowing book, read Operation Joker. And it's really quick. It's the story of like Joker. I don't know. It's like in this battle with Batman, Batman falls in this vat of what's essentially like youth serum. And he comes out a baby, and the Joker finds him and determines that he has to raise baby Bruce Wayne to become Batman because he needs his adversary back. So it's just the Joker being a single dad.
Yeah. The companion book to that was Superman versus Meishi, which I really love as well. So if you have not gotten those two books, Superman versus Meishi is basically about Superman going to Japan every lunchtime to try out a Japanese dish. It's the most way out thing, and I was telling somebody at Cartoon Network in Asia that we should adapt that into an anime series. Yeah, so that's something that is amazing. And yeah, let's talk a little bit, go back to like reaching out to new readers and younger readers as well. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, like with those programs, you know, that's trying to find the readers where they are, you know, in the sense of, you know, like I said, like authentic manga, you know, the webtoons. You know, we have other relationships too that I can't really speak to. That, like, again, you know, we've done stuff like Instagram comics, or you know, sort of trying to do social media stuff. We have original digital content too, but it's also just like a very challenging market because, again, it's sort of it is. I mean, I have 3 kids, so you see the competitive nature of tablets and, you know, or, you know, games as well as, like I said, like manga and like Dogman. I don't know if like Dogman's big in Singapore. It's this insane book that like puts children under the spell. So, you know, again, like it's a very focused attempt at like finding these different markets and these different avenues to sort of try to onboard new readers. And also like, so that is the other groups that sort of handle that. Again, the job of what we try to do within the core line is the executive editor and our editorial group is to create content that is appealing both to like current fans, lapsed fans as they've been known, but also new fans. You know, the books, as we relaunch something like Wonder Woman #1, it's like as we try to find a new audience or bring in like new readers and stuff. And in the American market in particular, there's a lot of competition, you know, to find those dollars and those readers and stuff. So we're definitely trying. You know, a lot of effort's being put into it.
Since you brought up the topic of dollars, what do you think of the price point of comic books these days? You can get a 200-page manga for $9.99, and then you get a 20-page American comic for $3.99, $4.99 next month with Marvel. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, a lot goes into, you know, the price of the comics. It's not, you know, obviously creative teams, you know, the cost of the overhead to produce. But in the last, you know, since the pandemic in particular, we've seen a lot of paper shortages and a lot of, you know, material focus that has sort of affected pricing too. So, I mean, we try editorially very hard to like give content that's worth your hard-earned dollar, you know, your hard-earned dollars. But you know, and there's like inflation, like there's a lot of like factors that affect it versus just like we just want all your money, you know, anything along those lines. But like, you know, so much that goes into it, and so, you know, and again, like, and I can't speak to why Marvel with their price change, but like paper has gone up, you know, and this, like having access, like I said, to that, or like certain cover stocks and stuff along those lines. It's, you know, it is, you know, it is like I said, it's the market in the U.S. in particular is sort of challenged right now.
You're giving me a lot of segues. So you talk about cover stock. Let's talk about the variant cover trend. You know, it's been going on for a couple of years already. It seems to be even crazier now that you've got foil covers even for reprints, which is like, why, right? Do variant covers make or break sales? That's one. And what's the next trend for variant covers?
So yeah, I mean, yeah, the variant cover market has sort of exploded in the last couple of years in particular. In fact, I think 80% of the creators here all do variant covers for Marvel and DC. And
That's
Boom. I don't think they necessarily make or break sales because, you know, a book like Batman sells fairly consistently,
regardless.
And depending on, you know, you can definitely like kind of juice sales depending on the cover artist or the characters that you have on there. So they are sort of a sales item or like a sales tool that you can use, I think, to great effect. One of the things we as publishers have to be very cognizant of is flooding the market, which to some degree I would say, like probably a lot of the American publishers are sort of guilty of that right now. Too many options, or too many price points. I'll say with the foil on reprints and stuff, I think it was a quote from like a Marvel executive years ago that was basically like, "You stop buying them, we'll stop printing them," type thing. But the foil ones are in particularly cool. You know, it's a very cool product. We try, we do experiment with different sort of like, you could say, cover gimmicks. So I'm the editor on Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong.
I was going to bring up that so cover. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it finally arrived. Actually, it took 3 months, I think, to print and get here. So this series, a true mashup between like the legendary Godzilla and Kong and the Justice League. There are these two variant covers in issue 1 that are sound chip covers. So you get the Kong one, you get the Godzilla one. You open it up, and it like has the movie roar of the which is it's a crazy fun cover. My kids are just like, they just want to wear the battery out because they love hearing the roars. But as like an editor, it is what the future, I think, was part of the question. And I think finding those sort of unique opportunities to do never before covers, or like we did on Unstoppable Doom Patrol, which was the book I edited. The first issue had a scratch off variant cover where it was a character looking in the mirror. She's this character that has multiple personalities, and it's like, who is she today? And you could get like 6 different versions. And they're like as like chase covers, or but they're also just fun and different. And so I think. Now, I've been working on variant covers since like 2016. I was part of the original team for Rebirth that was doing all the retailer covers and stuff. So my philosophy and what I've tried to do on my books is like create content that people are sort of interesting or fascinating, or a theme, rather than just sort of like, I hate to say throwaway covers or whatever, but like, again, me personally, and I know our team, is like create like value proposition for both retailers and consumers, so that if you're buying that variant cover, you're getting something like, it's not just a standard, run-of-the-mill cover. It's something cool or different, or that hopefully you want to own. So
the Kong Godzilla cover is very rare. I think it just arrived in the comic book stores this week, and it's already sold out, and it's going for like ridiculous amounts of money, but I've seen it, and I actually flipped it and looked at it. It's such a fun book to have.
I should have brought them. I actually have a box of them at home. I should have brought them to show. Yeah. But we do like glow in the dark covers, or like hollow foil. I mean, it's fun.
So tell us a little bit about DC's long-term strategy with initiatives such as Black Label. You've got a new book featuring Batman and Dan Jurgens, who's not really necessarily known for mature readers kind of comic books, even though he killed Superman once upon a time. But tell us a little bit about Black Label.
I would say I don't think the long-term strategy for Black Label has changed. I think I think the mandate and the goal still remains like what it has been from day one, and that just continue developing sort of like top shelf sort of product with the characters, with like top creators, and sort of delivering, sort of benchmark reading experiences. And they are mature rated books. So, I'm kind of curious to read a Dan Jurgens mature rated book. But First Night is going to be very interesting, I think, too, because it's, set like in the early days of Batman in the 30s, I believe, or it's not, or early 40s. I'd have to double check that one. So I think, in some cases too, I would say like I've edited some Black Label books as well, and they weren't mature rated at all. Like I worked on a book like The Human Target that there was nothing objectionable in there. It was just sort of like a format, like sort of rating more than anything else. But again, as an example, like I said, like Black Label, they have a lot of just tip of the iceberg that we've seen so far in the works that I think people are going to be really excited for. Okay. I don't know if anyone's checking out something like Gargoyle of Gotham by that Batman book is terrific. And there's a lot of other, cool projects that they have in the works for sure.
Okay. I've got a couple of more questions, and then we're going to open up the floor for questions. One fanboy question I have, if you could bring in any creators from the past or the present, or who's not even in comic books, into your books, who would you bring?
Wait, so past or present comic creators, or people that
who are not working at DC,
or non-comic creators?
Yeah, or non-comic book creators.
Oh my
Like the
goodness.
writer of Dogman, for example. I don't know.
Oh, well, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do a Batman Dogman crossover.
Yeah.
That's a tough one because I you know I'll give you an example. I mean, I worked with Brian K. Vaughan on Ex Machina, which
Right.
was a fascinating a Wildstorm book we did back in the
Right.
day. I mean, Brian is a tremendous writer, very sweet. I know that this would never lead anywhere, but I would love to see Brian sort of take on one of our like core characters.
Right.
I think you do a great, Wonder Woman or Superman, or I'd be interesting. I think he's written some Batman stuff.
He's done Batman before. Yeah.
Right. So, I've always loved him. I mean, oh boy, this will never happen, but, be interesting to see what like maybe someone like Robert Kirkman might do would be
Right.
kind of fun.
Right.
I talked to, I don't know, there's so many. Here's a plot twist for you. Like, for a Batman book, do you know who the author James Ellroy is?
Yeah.
Wrote like LA Confidential.
Yeah.
Like getting James Ellroy to do like a Batman series
Okay.
would be like that would be amazing. It'll never happen, but
Well, in
you never know.
the past, there was Harlan Ellison writing
Yeah.
Batman, so you never know.
Yeah, great point, Leslie.
Yeah.
That's a very great
Yeah.
point. But I would love to see. It would have to be Black Label because I don't think
Yeah.
James Ellroy could
For sure.
do other than like a Black Label sort of
Right.
Batman book. But yeah. Now I'm going to be thinking about this. I'm
Yeah.
going to see you tomorrow and be like, man,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
all these people.
I'll give you my list as well. My wish list of comic book artists and writers I
Artists.
want to have in a DC book.
Yeah.
I'll give you that list.
Yeah, now I'm thinking. I mean, like, as a Batman editor, if I could have like Jim Aparo draw a Batman book for me, it would be like literally like I could retire at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. What's one comic book that's not published by DC that you're enjoying right now as a reader?
Only one.
Okay, three.
I got three. Okay, I could give you a couple. Something. Has everyone checked out this book called "Something's Killing the Children"
Yeah, yeah.
over at Boom?
Yeah.
Love that series.
He was here last year.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I worked with James Tynion on both Batman and the Joker when
Yeah.
that book debuted,
Uh-huh.
and like I've been a consistent just like favorite. My 14-year-old daughter loves
Mm.
that series too. So the fanboy in me, there's a new Transformers series.
Oh,
from
yes.
Skybound by Daniel Warren Johnson.
Yes.
Which is insanely awesome. Like
yes,
reading
it's
that
very
first issue, I was like, "This is like literally written for me," and it like the art is beautiful.
Right.
I mean, it's just terrific.
Right.
And then let's see one other one. I'll be honest, I'm behind on my Marvel reading, so
Okay.
I it's just one of those you fall far enough behind and then you can't really catch up.
and-
I just started a manga series from Kodansha called Vinland Saga,
Okay.
which I've had volumes sitting on my shelf forever. I know that's an older one, but I'll get someone clapping right here. So I'd say that would be my third one. Now I'm trying to think of some other ones. Dark Ride is very good
Okay.
at Image. Yeah, the new Dracula book was cool that James did with,
Right.
I think Martin Simmons here,
Right,
who's the
right.
artist on it.
Yep.
Now you're going to get me, I'm going to start talking about all these comics and stuff.
And one last point. Now that you've like plugged all the non-DC comics, plug one big DC story or series that's currently being published that you'd like everyone to check out.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
Because I can't resist. So on the one hand, and this is something I'm working on directly.
Okay.
So unfortunately, it's going to be Bat focused. Sorry, everyone that's not in the Batman
That
titles.
focus is good.
But come February, we're doing a little storyline that we're calling the Joker Year One.
Yeah.
That'll like span like in the pages of Batman. We're going to ship 3 issues that month. That will
That's right.
tell the story of basically what happened to the Joker after he fell in that vat,
Right.
of chemicals and Ace Chemical, and like basically Batman 0 year. So it's Chip Zdarsky writing it on art. It's Giuseppe Camuncoli and Andrea Sorrentino and Stefano Nessi. It is an amazing story, and I hope everyone checks it out.
Okay.
Then on the other one, the aforementioned Elseworlds.
Okay.
So I've always been a fan of Elseworlds. In some ways, that almost spoke to me more as a reader when I
Right.
was younger,
Right.
because even though I am the sort of boss of the sort of like canonical driven content,
Right.
picking up something like Batman, Gotham by
Gotham by
Gaslight,
Gaslight,
or
yeah.
Superman Red Sun, where
Yeah.
it was a self-contained, high concept
Yep.
story, always appealed to me. And so as we announced back in October 2024, we're bringing Elseworlds back, and we announced 6 titles that are a
Right.
part of it.
Mhm.
Now, some of them like I'd been working on, like DC versus Vampires and Dark Knights of Steel.
Right.
But we have, we're revisiting Gotham by Gaslight, kind of continuing the
Oh,
story.
wow. Okay.
For it's called the Kryptonian Age, which you could probably start to your mind wander where that could lead
Right.
to. Then we have a book called Batman the Barbarian by Greg Smallwood.
Oh, wow.
who did Human Target. I'm wearing a shirt by the Man Boys are doing a book
Okay.
called Batman Nightfire.
Right.
We have a book called Green Lantern Dark that by Tate Bromble and Werther Deldra, who does Something
Right.
is Killing the Children.
Uh-huh.
And then yeah, it's and like I said, Dark Knights of Steel, and I don't know if anyone checked that one out. Basically, Game of Thrones, DC. And so that I'm very excited for that because again, that's
So
a
am I.
passion project. Oh, it's going to be awesome. And most of the first issues are already all done, so
Okay.
we're like really far ahead. So when we announced, am I losing
You're
it?
good.
When
You're
we
good.
announce release dates and stuff, like
Right.
we'll also have the content basically done. So trying to work really far ahead. So there's two.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to open up questions for the floor. Just one little house rule. We do not talk about James Gunn and what he's doing for DC's movies because Ben's not be able to answer any of those questions anyways, right?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. I appreciate that.
No
Also, I just
problem.
don't know anything.
Yeah.
I learn on social media like everyone else does.
Yeah. So let's start with any questions from anyone on the floor. Got one there?
What's the what in your eyes? What do you think is the one unique selling point of American comics compared to Japanese manga?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess on the one hand, what so like DC and Marvel do, you know, like with the sort of mythology of superheroes, I think we do like that material. I hope we do it very well, and the sort of legacy of those characters. Now, granted, My Hero Academia is an amazing series, and I'm very jealous as I read that series and watch the anime. But I think, you know, what's exciting too is like, so the superheroes has sort of been the backbone of the American market for generations. But in a lot of ways, you know, manga titles have inspired a lot of creators, you know, over the last decade or two. So we've seen a lot of like genres like horror and science fiction, fantasy start to, you know, come into the American market where they, you know, and a decade earlier, I don't think they were necessarily. So I think it's like, I don't want to say it's a symbiotic relationship in that sense, but it's, I think, very inspiring and is more, I mean, the manga boom over the last 20 years has brought a lot of content that had never been to in the US. And so I think hopefully it's mutual inspiration. I mean, I'd like to think that My Hero Academia might not have existed without the Marvel and DC universes as far as inspiration goes, but
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we've got lots of. Okay.
So, following on the question about dream comic book authors, which pre-20th century literary figure, if you could choose, like one who is long dead, would you be inspired to bring back to write the comic book story today?
About Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I would love
Okay.
to see his take on it. He could do a Batman Sherlock Holmes team up. I think would be actually we kind of have a Sherlock Holmes character.
Right.
We sort of implied it was Sherlock Holmes in the first arc that James Tynion wrote. Had like tutored Bruce Wayne at some point. So I would say Conan Doyle. How about you? Did you have anyone that comes to your mind? I'm sorry, you're running back with the microphone.
I guess I was wondering what Shakespeare might do with a
Oh
comic
yeah,
book.
he was number two. I was like, but I was like, I'm the Batman guy, so I got to lean towards the detective. Loki or
Loki?
you guys?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, hi Ben. So one thing, Superman vs. Messi is great. One of my favorite books this year.
It's a great book.
Also, you were talking about crossovers just then, right? So I have been digging JL versus Godzilla versus Kong.
Yep.
So where did that idea come from? It's a bit out there, but it actually works.
Wait, which book? I'm sorry.
JL versus Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh, okay. Sorry, there's like some loud people right there. You know, that's funny, like where that book came from. Partly it's like a lot of the stuff I work on, like Elseworlds, is sort of my own passions where I'm like, I love Godzilla. Oh my gosh, you actually have a copy right there. So I love Godzilla, and I've loved the legendary movies, and you know, Kong Skull Island might be my children's favorite movie.
Right.
So I've known Robert Napton, who's the legendary comics publisher and senior vice president. And I don't remember, he and I were having coffee or something at one point because when we were still based in I'm no longer based in Burbank because I
Right.
work remotely, but we shared the same offices as
Right.
Legendary. So we were like hanging out, and it was basically, we were like, man, wouldn't it be cool if like Batman fought Godzilla? Like that would be wild if we did something along those lines. And he was like, yeah, we should do something like that. And so it started to like, you know, snowball roll from there to where then we were like, it should just, you know, we do Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. It's set within that, you know, that movie window.
Yep.
And so it just sort of like, you know, it came together from there. And I don't want to spoil anything because there's some big beats coming in the later issues. But that one has just been an absolute joy. And Legendary has been a terrific partner. Robert and I co-edit the book. Brian Buccellato, who's the writer on it, and Christian Duce, now Tom Derenek's coming to help out. It's just like, it is perfect. And it's nice to see that it is sold out, and the reviews have been like, this is exactly what you think it is. And that was the whole point. I mean, it's giant kaiju in the Justice League, you're fighting them, you deal with the size issues, and
Was there anything in that series that you couldn't do?
No, not really. I mean, it's set within, like I said, within with basically the Godzilla versus Kong movie verse on that one side. I mean, there were things that I wish we could have explored more, but we didn't. Like, there's like Monarch elements that, because it's set actually in the DC universe, not in the Legendary verse, the MonsterVerse. That could have been fun, but I think we're kind of hitting all the big notes. I think for sure. I mean, let's just say Jim Lee did a variant cover where Batman is in this giant robot fighting Godzilla, and like that would be pretty cool to see on the interiors. So,
thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you have a copy. I love it. Did you like it? Yes. Another satisfied customer. All right, Loki, did you have a question? Or we have Tanj, the Tanjo earrings.
Okay, I know this is kind of superficial, but I really want to know, who are your favorite superheroes and supervillains? I want a top 3 for each, but you cannot say Batman or any Batman-related superheroes or villains.
Oh, wow.
Well, I don't have an answer then. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, well, Batman is my favorite character, but I guess if we're doing superheroes, correct? I would say I love Wonder Woman. I love Wolverine. Like, everyone loves Wolverine. Am I right? And number 3, who would that be? You said no Bat family characters, right? So
yeah.
Okay. Because I do have some other favorites in the Bat family. Now I'm getting overwhelmed here trying to think about Hellboy. I'd say Hellboy's the third one.
Hellboy? Okay.
Because I was actually the assistant editor when I was on staff at Dark Horse as an intern. I worked on like Hellboy Wake the Devil. Shows you how old I am. Right. And then villains. I mean, Lex Luthor might be the greatest villain and still resonant to this day, even though he's like 1,000 years old, it feels like. We're sort of building her up in a lot of ways too, but Amanda Waller, like Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller represent very sort of basic humanity evil, whether it be government, corporations, things along those lines. And then probably the third one would be Magneto. I was a big X-Men reader as a kid, so I would say Magneto because he's like a very interesting, like his backstory and compelling in his powers. When he pulled all that mayhem out of Wolverine's body, that was real. That was trauma. Yeah. Wait, hold on though. What's your favorite villain? Number 1 and your number 1 favorite character, and I'll allow Bat family.
Okay, I'll have to say, I think maybe Superman. I know that's a classic, but Superman and the Joker.
Oh, great choices. Great choices. I was right neck and neck with Superman and Wonder Woman, but the Wonder Woman book right now is so good that I'm she's great. So
please check it out if you've not. Any other questions from anyone?
All right. Oh, hey, what's up, man?
Hey Ben, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So about James Gunn. No, I'm kidding.
Who's that?
It's just sort of building off of that. What's your besides Gotham by Gaslight as well as Superman Red Son? What would your favorite Elseworld story be? Just like you personally.
Well, actually, technically, nerd moment. When Gotham by Gaslight came out, it was actually not an Elseworld.
Yeah.
It was what inspired it later, and they rebranded it after the fact. Like I said, Red Son. I love Kingdom Come. Justice League: The Nail by Alan Davis was like that. Might be my all-time favorite Justice League story. Like all the Red Rain stuff with Kelly Jones, Batman versus Dracula and stuff like that. All that was like terrific. And there were even some like kind of odd ones, like where they were like the Kents, where they're in like the Wild West, or Batman Holy Terror, where I think they were like in puritanical England or something like that. Like there's some really interesting ones too. But yeah, I would say like Kingdom Come and The Nail, and like those are the ones I've sort of read multiple times. And Gotham by Gaslight, even though, like I said, it was sort of inaugurated in. And the new series by Andy Diggle and Leandro Fernandez is like, it is one of those great experiences as an editor. And I pat myself on the back for hiring the right team. Yep. It's like perfect. Like the scripts are awesome. The art is like, I mean, it's just, I can't say enough about how much I'm enjoying that book. It makes my job easy. Like, that's always, I'll say the number one, like when people always ask, what do you need to know to become a good editor? Like how, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone will give you a different answer. My answer is always just like, hire the right creators.
Yeah.
That literally, like, that is the easiest answer you can have. So.
Right.
All right, thanks for the answer.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Harley Quinn, you got a question back there? Any questions? You got how Gotham War ends? No, I'm just kidding.
I would say that Generations by John Byrne is one of my favorite.
Oh, John Byrne.
Elseworlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he's not angry with anyone this week, I would love to get him to write a book for you.
Yeah.
Draw a book for
Yeah.
you.
No comment on his anger.
Yeah.
But his Man of Steel, I mean, it's,
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, for a guy that just basically would like reinvent, characters. Like
Yeah.
I worked on, when I was at Marvel, I worked on a lot of collected editions, and I worked on his Fantastic Four, like I had never read. And his Fantastic Four stuff was amazing
Agreed.
too. Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, it was great.
Agree. If there are no questions, we've got 5. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Harley does have a question.
Harley's got a question.
Is the question which Harley Quinn costume is my favorite? Oh, Robin.
Sorry, just on that note of like hiring the right people, for
Yeah.
your creatives, like what kind of like skill sets or like mentalities do you look out for new creatives?
So now you're asking, how do you find the right people? Oh, dang it. I think I was going to follow up on that one. I mean, part of it is just like I think an industry knowledge. I try to read a lot of comics and sort of be aware of like the strengths of like writers and artists. So when, we're essentially sort of like casting a series, or we're like, I want to do a book starring, Duke Thomas or whatever. And then we, like editorially, we might discuss it, and we kind of start to like think about like the character themselves or the team, or, the type of book we want to do, and like which writers and artists that fits their strengths. And so, and that's sort of how we fill that void. For instance, when James Tynion was leaving Batman, we hired Josh Williamson to do the Abyss arc, and then the arc that was Shadow War. Like the question was like, who was going to follow up? And we were talking about a lot of different names, but it was Marie Javins who initially was like, it has to be Chip Zdarsky, basically, because like, are you reading his Daredevil? And it was. I mean, he was, and I love what Chip and Jorge are doing on Batman now. But that's a big part of it. It's like industry knowledge and like reading the material and knowing their strengths. And another sort of shout out too for a book I'm working on called Batman Offworld, which is it's Jason Aaron's first sort of DC series.
Right.
And and it's like, if you've read Jason Aaron's work, you just know he's the right person to write Batman. And it's like sort of pitch perfect. And Doug Monkey and Jaime Mendoza on art has just been like thumbs up. So
Right. I've got one last question, and that's to tie up with WIP. Can you give us any advice for the next generation of storytellers and creators? What should they be looking out for and doing more of in order to succeed?
You mean just like in the industry in general?
Yeah, and in the industry, how to get noticed by people like you?
I mean, that's a good question, because I've been doing portfolio reviews all day, and there are a lot of talented people in Singapore and beyond. And one of the things I consistently have been telling them, and so a lot of this like art, which I'm seeing, might not be what you'd consider like a traditional superhero artist for like a Marvel or DC. But one of the things that, I try to stress, even though like as executive editor DC, it's like, the authenticity of your like creativity, like rather than trying to, adjust what you do to think you can fit into what Batman or Superman or the X-Men has to be. Right. You need to follow your own passion, because again, like any other job, if you get into, work, or you compromise what you're doing to try to like achieve, I don't know, whatever, you think the product needs, or in some cases corporate ownership wants, things along those lines, it can become, it can kill that passion. It can put that fire out really fast. True. So it is like a stress on authenticity, and do what you love and find ways to do it. And again, like you look at like what we're doing with webtoons or our middle grade or young adults, you can the mythology of these characters, you can reinvent Batman in like so many different ways, and or the Bat Family or Superman or Wonder Woman, and they can fit different genres, and you can fit different passions. So I think it's just like basically, follow your creative fire, and then, and there's those ways to sort of apply that or sort of make it work.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Did that answer your question? I feel like I got rambly there, but
it did. I'm doing a panel tomorrow at 4 o'clock right here. And in honor of DC Comics again, I'm calling it New Talent Showcase. And we're going to spotlight 6 amazing Singapore talents right here at 4 o'clock tomorrow. So please come back for that if you have time.
I might sit in the back on that and
Yeah,
take
you
some
should,
notes.
you should
then.
take a look at that. Yeah, so thank you so much, Ben, for doing this for us. And welcome back to Singapore again. I hope you see you here again another time.
Thank you,
Hopefully
Leslie.
with Ben, with Jim, and
Jim Lee,
Jim Lee and Marie and
Yeah.
whoever you can bring.
Yeah.
Tell them all about how wonderful Singapore is.
I will.
And,
I
yeah.
will. And like, thank you for having me, Leslie. Thank you for hosting this. Thank all of you for like coming and showing up. I'm at, I think it's G109. I'm at a table and I'm doing portfolio reviews, but I'm also just sort of hanging out, talking comics. If you want to come say hello, or got some pins and stuff I'm giving away, or just, ask questions you didn't want to ask on microphone necessarily. I'm there all day tomorrow too. So I would love to chat and, and hear from everyone. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.